Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 590 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Susan. She is a person who emails me a lot. Not a ton, but a fair amount. And I liked her emails and thought, well, I bet you I'd like Susan. And I did. And I think you might too. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I don't want to give this all away, so I'll just tell you that Susan was diagnosed at age 14, and she's just recently turned 60 years old. She's had type 1 diabetes for quite some time. Her experiences are interesting, her perspective unique, and her style is delightful. Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Scott.
How are you?
I feel like I know you, but you don't know me. It's very weird.
I feel like you think you know me, and I definitely don't know you.
But you're gonna know me.
Well,
anyway.
that's the whole point of this, right?
I know.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't see each other. Is that correct? It's just
Yes.
okay. That's fine.
This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Find out more at contournext.com/juicebox. Get the meter that my daughter uses. This episode is also sponsored by Omnipod, makers of the Omnipod Dash and the Omnipod Promise. You'll find out more about the Promise later, but right now, let me tell you that if you're interested in finding out if you're eligible for a free 30-day supply of the Omnipod Dash, it's just a click away at omnipod.com/juicebox.
Hi, I'm Susan. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, which I never thought I would live in. And I have had type 1 diabetes. Well, next month will be my 45th diaversary. And so that, and I got it when I was 14 and had a bad start. rough many years. But
Before I ask you about that, do you broadcast your voice for a living, or have you in the past? You have a very lovely voice.
Oh, you're so sweet. No, I was actually thinking about how I probably would hate my voice if I was hearing it today. And, but I just have to speak and not think about that, because otherwise I would hate it. I would probably mess something up.
Of all the things that you're very welcome. Of all the things that I don't expect from people, that's one of them, that they're very concerned with what their voice sounds like. And I always say the same thing, like, no one knows what you sound like. Even you, by the way, you don't know what you sound like.
Well, we hear our voices through the bones in our heads, so we don't hear our voices the way other people hear them.
Yeah. No, but your voice is smooth. It's a little creamy, a little smoky, and then you modulate once in a while. It's like you're doing it on purpose, but you're not, are you?
No, not at all. Oh. That's really great, though.
Yeah.
I do love the idea of reading out loud. I used to do that with, when my kids were little. I read to them out loud, and good. And I listen to podcasts and books on audio, so I know that it matters. But I was doing it very unconsciously.
Well, no, it's so funny that that's what you thought of, because the juxtaposition is, I was thinking, back in the 80s when those adult phone lines were open, you probably could have made a lot of money. So.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
I could really still use, like a little from home occupation. So
I don't think that is a business anymore, though. I mean, I think technology's gone past a lady on the phone being nice to you. So
yeah, right. That's true.
It's got to. Do you remember back in the day, like at midnight you're watching television, all of a sudden like a Stark phone number would pop up in front of you, and some girl in what appeared to be a lingerie would start telling you to call her, and you were like, why is this happening? And I really hope my parents don't see this while I'm on.
She had real smoky, creamy voice. Yeah. I mean, that was over the top. Yeah.
I think you could lean
into I mean, I know the type. I'm not that type, but yes, I remember those.
All right. Now you're like, listen, this is not what I expected from this. Tell me again.
I've listened to enough of your interviews.
Oh, you thought this was my
know that you and their conversations, and that's really fine.
Good. You said 14 when you were diagnosed?
I was.
How old are you now? Can I ask?
Well, 45th anniversary next month, and my birthday's in October.
Should we do it together?
Take out your trusty
All
calculator.
right, so hold on. 45 is easy. And then you add 10 to it. That's what I would do. 55. And then you got to go get the 4 that you left behind. That makes you 59.
That is correct. And I have tried, ever since I turned 50, I've trained myself to not be embarrassed to say that, because it is a little bit of a mind bender when inside you feel young. And I do feel young inside in so many ways. I don't feel like what my impression when I was young of what a 60-year-old would be. So, and I have friends of all different ages, which I really love. And I'm really proud of that. So, yeah, I'm going to be 60 in October. It's very strange. But anyway, so yeah, 14 years old really changed things.
I would imagine. So, do you remember anything about it?
About my diagnosis?
Yeah.
I remember, so it happened in June when I actually finally got a diagnosis. But I do remember, so I was in 8th grade, and I remember spending probably 2 semesters of running to the water fountain as soon as class would let out. And peeing a lot, all the classic symptoms. But my mother, who was usually run them to the doctor at the first sniffle, I think subconsciously she knew something was really going down. And I think she was, I'm surmising here, but I do think she knew that I had a regularly scheduled doctor's appointment in June. So we waited it out. And I do also remember that the last week or 2 before that doctor's appointment, I was too sick to go to school. Like, I was home. And I remember orange juice. I remember going to a fair. We would have a Memorial Day fair in our town, and there would be, Slurpees and candy cotton and stuff like that. And I was not like a big sweets person.
Right.
But I remember like really screwy dietary choices because I didn't know what was going on in my body. Anyway, then I got my diagnosis. I was in the hospital. My parents came in, and they were like deer in the headlights. And I kind of, they sort of set a 14-year-old who didn't know what she was doing loose, to her own devices. And my doctor was not, if it were my kid now, I would switch them to an endo right away. Mm-hmm. But they let my primary care physician do everything. And I remember leaving the hospital after about a week saying, shouldn't I get a special diet or something? And I was told, you can eat what you always eat, just don't eat too much sugar. I mean, oh my God. Is that bad advice or what? So honestly, I don't even know how I stumbled through the last 40 years. I really don't. And I consider myself very, very lucky that I do not have any severe complications. I'm
a little frozen by it, not because my experience was so much different or that things are so much different now, but because of what you just said, that you came out the other side so, like, not effortlessly, but well. And how, like, did you ever think about that? Like the randomness of luck and.
Oh yeah, because I think some of it was genetics, because I can't account for it any other way. And I just I didn't know what I was doing. And it wasn't till, honestly, it's been a life journey that I kind of only embraced in stages. So I met my future husband when I was in my late 20s. And that was the beginning of kind of wanting to take care of myself better. I mean, no one ever said, hey, listen, you're really going to have to do this on your own. And because you see your endo like once every 3 months, like they can't live with you every day. So you're going to have to do this, and you better study about it too. And I really just ignored all of that. And then we decided we wanted to get pregnant, and I knew I had to take care of myself on a different level to do that in preparation for it and during the pregnancy.
How did you know that? The doctor told you? Or was it a feeling?
I'm trying to remember if it was like me reading or the doctor taught, probably both, but there was that image of you want to make your body, your incubator, like as close to normal as possible. Yeah. And so as a pregnant mother, you're thinking, oh my goodness, like, oh, day 72, my blood sugar's high. What part of the baby is developing today that I could be affecting for its life? So, I was really aware that I had to be really, really careful. And my blood sugars were great. I was still on multiple daily injections. I had an endo at the time. I was living in New York City at the time, and my endo had said, I had asked him about these newfangled things called pumps. And he said to me, I know you, Susan, it will remind you all the time that you're diabetic. You will not like having one. And that was really bad advice. Yeah. And I don't know whether some people have suggested that maybe he just didn't know how to
help you,
have a patient with a pump. And I don't know. I'm not going to pin that on him. Maybe he really did think he knew me.
Maybe, Susan, people should keep the first thought they have inside of their head till they're sure about it. That's a problem that people have. Like, something has occurred to me right out of my mouth. What ended up
happening is when my son became a toddler, I found that I could not, my blood sugars were all over the map because I was dealing with him first and dealing with me after. Yeah. And I just thought, and by then we were living in New Jersey and I had a different endo who had handed me a VCR. Remember VCRs? Mm-hmm. She had handed me a VCR about pumps from one of the pump companies. And she said, just keep it, one of these days, maybe you'll watch it. Maybe you'll be interested. And I remember slipping it in my VCR player when my kid was about 2.5. And I said, because I thought I'll never have any more children if these are my blood sugars. I can't do it right now. And I looked at that video and I said, oh my goodness, I need one yesterday. And we got a pump really fast. I believe it was an Animas. I'm trying to remember because I did stay on Animas for a good long time until they
I'm amused that your endo gave you a VCR tape and gave you the instruction like you hear from people when they want you to think about life insurance. Take the packet home, look at it when you have time. Yeah. That's interesting.
I guess the other endo, his voice was in my head, maybe.
You're not going to like this, Susan. Yeah.
She didn't give me a hard sell, which was probably fine because then when it was meant to be, then, mm-hmm. I moved on ahead. So then, and the other thing that first endo had said to me was, I challenge you to show me a person on a pump that has as good blood sugars as you do. Now, I did get through a twin pregnancy on MDI, and they were good blood sugars. Mm-hmm. But, of course, I don't know if he was looking at the hemoglobin A1C at the time, because we know that is not I knew I was getting highs and lows, not necessarily during the pregnancy, but I mean,
about that
all the other times.
What's that like? Because you're an adult, right? Like, I don't mean that other people on here aren't adults. I mean, you've got experience on top of decades. So what is that really like when you know the truth and yet the person across from you is going, you're doing great. And when he says or she says you're doing great and you're thinking, I'm not. I almost fell over on the kitchen floor the other day and then my blood sugar was 400 after I corrected it. Like, why not speak up? It feels like going to a mechanic and you know the car won't stop and the mechanic goes, this thing's great. And you just go, okay. And you drive away. Like, why not go, no, the brakes don't work. Help me.
Well, I'll tell you exactly why. Yeah. It took a long time to change a mindset because I had been in that particular groove for a very long time. That's one thing. I didn't have I didn't have a concept of really where my blood sugar should be, like what was truly healthy. And I will tell you one other thing about my lows. I think I've been enormously fortunate. I've never had a seizure. I know that you had that experience with Arden. So I've never had a seizure. I have never passed out. I passed out once in my adult life, and it had nothing to do with diabetes, believe it or not.
Is it when you found out you had to move to Florida?
Pardon me? When I found out what? That I had to know.
That you had to move to Florida?
Honestly, Jacksonville isn't like the rest of Florida, and we really love it here.
Susan, people from all over Florida listen to the podcast. Be nice.
we like our community very much. But no, I just, I think, and I haven't been afraid of lows.
Right.
Now, maybe some of that was ignorance. I mean, after hearing some stories on your podcast, I think, ooh, maybe you should be a little bit more concerned. I could feel them even before I had the technology to show me where my blood sugars were heading. I could feel them. I never was insulin on or low unaware, and I would treat them. And I never walk out of the house without juice boxes. So, I love the name of your podcast. I feel very close to that.
Is it sort of like
the small ones? I found the small ones.
The tiniest ones to fit in your purse. I'm always worried when I give them to Arden. I'm like, they're going to break open in there and ruin the purse. Like, that's what I always think about. It never happens. And I'm always good. By the way, whoever makes juice boxes is an engineering genius, because you could basically throw them around and squeeze them and they won't break. Anyway, props to that person.
I've had some be carried around long enough so that they start to lose their shape, and then they will start to leak a little bit.
And you think to yourself, I'm going to throw this one out. This one's done its job, even though I haven't drank it. Or do you follow through and drink it?
It depends on if it's an emergency.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if it's starting to leak, I'm throwing it. But if if I've discovered it, say I'm in my bedroom and it's the morning and I'm refilling my handbag or something.
Right.
If I'm somewhere, it's, yeah. Try doing a juice box with a mask on an airplane. I didn't do that. I decided that was not going to work because I recently flew to California. It's like, can't do it. It's a two-handed proposition. And in order to remove the bottom part of your mask, if you're really trying to keep masked, you just can't do it.
Can you imagine a person sitting next to you who doesn't know you that's like, this lady's breaking the mask rules to have a juicy juice? That's odd. You
should have seen when my kids were little. My kids kind of understood that this was mommy's medicine. But I remember a friend of theirs one day looking at me. We were sitting in our synagogue, and he looked at me, and he was really young, and he wanted one too. And I said, I'm so sorry. This is my medicine. I can't give you
Get
one.
away, kid. I saw a gentleman at an event one time who had type 1, who was a massive person. He was 6'4" and probably weighed 240 pounds. And he was this huge guy, and he was walking around drinking this juice. And it just looked so much tinier in his hand than it does anywhere else. And it felt both kind of initially ridiculous. And then the more I looked at him, I thought, look at how kind of like effortlessly and without consideration this grown giant person is wandering around and just drinking. And it felt nice afterwards that he didn't feel odd about it. You know what I mean? But back to my question though, like, so all that time prior, and the doctor just tells you like, hey, whatever, you say you have to change your perspective and your idea of what good is. And you're telling a common story that most people tell. I met a person, I wanted to be healthier, I wanted to have children, I wanted to be healthier, like that kind of stuff. That seems to be very human. That idea of I don't need to better myself until it benefits someone else. I've given up on understanding it. It just seems like that's how it is.
I don't think I connected that actually embrace like I do now, but I know now that the better I take care of myself, then like I have to pay a lot of attention to diabetes in order to have a better quality of life. Yeah. And in the past, I thought that ignoring the diabetes as much as I could, it was there and I had to deal with it when it was too high or too low. But I really oh my goodness, when you're on, when I first started taking injections, it was Lente and regular. and it sets your course for the day.
Yeah.
And I bucked against that. And honestly, I don't think I was ever well schooled in it, but I just pumps were made for me. I needed to be able to live my life in where life was coming first, not whatever schedule was set for me. And as I said, my parents were deer in the headlights. So they didn't know what was going on. They didn't really try to educate themselves. I wasn't sent to diabetes camp. I didn't know any other type 1 diabetics for decades.
Right. And you were
it just was an island.
My math is right. You were diagnosed in the mid 70s ish.
Yeah, 76. Everyone else was celebrating the
centennial or bicentennial. Yeah. Well, but where I was going with that is, do you remember how old your parents were around that time ish?
I could figure it out. Let's see. Yeah, mom would have been about 44 because she had me when she was 30.
So your mom was born in the mid 30s then.
Pardon me?
Your mom was born in the mid 30s, meaning that she grew up in a world where people got sick and died. It wasn't her space wasn't, oh, you get sick and then someone figures it out or they give you this neat medicine that does something, or it was she was only, she grew up in a time where friends died, where people went to the hospital and didn't come back for things that today you don't even think of as being dangerous. That's so interesting. I'm sure she's passed now, but that'd be very interesting to hear from somebody. I wonder if you were diagnosed and she just thought, we lost one. Well,
here's the irony of irony. Well, first of all, I was her firstborn, and she had already lost a brother in infancy, not infancy, but toddler, young adulthood, maybe 4, to leukemia, and then another brother in the Korean War. So no, she wasn't going to let me go easily, I don't think. But where was I going with that? I don't know. I don't remember.
When you said Korean War, it made me think of MASH. So my head glanced awful.
Oh yeah, I remember the first episode. Literally, I remember watching it.
Yeah, I know people don't understand that idea anymore of being somewhere on a day at a time to watch a TV show, but. But my point just was I wonder how much control she felt like she had. Probably none, and maybe she thought you were a better option than she was, which is ridiculous. You're a parent, I'm a parent. 14-year-olds are not really good at things most of the time.
No, I was terrible. I will also say, in her defense, I was a very headstrong kid, and if someone tried, she probably. First of all, she did trust my intelligence, but, I don't think she had any clue as to what she was really, leaving me up to here.
Right.
But I really was very headstrong. So,
was she aware that you would get dizzy, that you would that the things that would happen to you? Because, it just occurs to me while we're talking that you've had so much experience with this. I'm not calling you old. I'm just saying it's a nice thing. You have a depth and length of experience to be able to tell me if living prior to faster acting insulin, pumps, the CGMs, that idea, did you just feel like you were, I don't know, driving with your eyes closed and just waiting to hit something to turn the other direction?
In retrospect, absolutely. In retrospect, completely.
How much do you think that impacted your life? I'm going to start today by speaking about the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump. My daughter, who is 17 years old, has been wearing an Omnipod every day since she was 4. Every day, the Omnipod. And it has been nothing but a friend through this entire time. Omnipod is tubeless. It is wireless. And it is lovely. Just this little pod that you wear. It holds the insulin right inside of it. And so it doesn't have to be connected back to some controller that's holding your insulin. It's all with you constantly. When you need to make an adjustment or give yourself insulin, you pull out a little handheld device and you push a couple of buttons. Bada bing, bada boom, it's all done. Back in your bag, back in your pocket with the device. And that's that. This tubeless thing, it's important because you can shower, bathe, swim with the Omnipod on. You don't have to take it off. All of the other insulin pumps that are wired like that, you have to take them off to enter the water. Not with Omnipod. Isn't that convenient? It is. How about when you're playing sports or doing activities where you're worried that your tubing might get caught? You don't have that concern with an Omnipod. Now you can go to omnipod.com/juicebox to find out more about this. But before you go, let me tell you this one brief story. It's crazy, and it's true. A friend of mine recently broke their finger in an insulin pump tubing accident. Now I realize that is something that's not going to happen every day, but as soon as I heard that, I thought, well, that wouldn't happen with Omnipod. No tubing. Don't worry, she's okay. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Head over and find out if you're eligible for the free 30-day supply of the Omnipod Dash insulin pump. You can also ask them to send you a free demo pod or just poke around the website. And if you're thinking, well, Scott, I will, but maybe not today because I'm waiting for that next big thing from Omnipod. If you're thinking that, you don't have to, because there's no need to wait for the next big thing, because with the Omnipod Promise, you can upgrade to Omnipod's latest technologies for no additional cost as soon as they're available to you and covered by insurance. Terms and conditions apply. But like I said, they promise you can upgrade. So get started with Dash today. And if something different comes out later that you want, Omnipod promises you can upgrade. All right, now let me tell you about the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It is small, easy to hold, easy to use, has a super bright light, is incredibly accurate, and offers second chance test strips. Honestly, that's all I should have to tell you. I should stop right there and go contournext.com/juicebox. But I'm going to tell you more. I'm going to give you my opinion. It's super simple. When it comes to blood glucose meters, in my opinion, we don't pay enough attention to the quality of the meter, the quality of the number that comes back from the test. Is it accurate? It's important, and for some reason we don't think about it. We just take whatever meter the doctor gives us, but you don't have to do that. The Contour Next One blood glucose meter may be cheaper in cash than you're paying right now through your insurance for your meter. It is definitely incredibly accurate, and it offers second chance testing. That means if you touch that strip to blood but don't get quite enough, you can go back and get more without ruining the test strip or the quality of the results. It's important. So just look into it. contournext.com/juicebox. Take you a couple of minutes to upgrade your gear. Do you really want to be making decisions with bad numbers? Of course not.
Pardon me?
How much do you think that reality impacted your life?
Of not of kind of driving blind?
Yeah, of the feeling that you're walking around knowing that at any moment without any kind of warning, someone might run up behind you and smack you in the back of the head. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is that not how it felt? Like, it feels to me that's what it would be like, but
I think because you're so schooled in it, your daughter was diagnosed and you made it your business because we're able to, right? We have the internet, we've got all these tools. I think I got by ignoring the reality you're talking about. I really do. I don't think
okay.
I think as much as I could. And there were times when I couldn't ignore it. Like when so I've heard of parents who worried that their diabetic child shouldn't live alone. I was fearless. I moved, I grew up in the suburbs of New York, northern suburbs. And, when it was time for me to go to school, I left high school early and, graduated early and went straight to New York City. And never for a moment do I remember my parents ever saying they were worried I wouldn't wake up one morning or worried, fearless. I was fearless about it. And, not only in retrospect does it occur to me that maybe they should have worried, or maybe I should have worried.
Susan,
but when
this
I
is
was
your life and you're looking back,
18, I did end up in DKA.
Okay.
And I ended up in the hospital. I remember the Shah of Iran was in the same hospital at the time. So that dates me a bit. And, you know, and then I think after that, I kind of went back to how I muddled through.
Where did DKA come from? Did you stop giving yourself insulin?
No, I just must have really been out of whack. No. I never did any of those like, oh, don't give your, manipulate your insulin so you'll lose weight. I don't think I understood that one could even do that.
I feel like that back then there were some people who would just stop taking their insulin in silent protest.
I never did that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because it is a personal protest. If anyone listening who's ever done that, who wants to come on and talk about it specifically, I'd be thrilled about that. But just the idea of like, I don't want to have diabetes anymore. Let me see how long I can go without paying attention to it.
That wouldn't work very well.
No. And by the way, it doesn't work well, but I don't think that it was uncommon, or maybe is still common for people.
I will tell you a couple of things that I think are, in retrospect, surprising. One is that I never felt sorry for myself, and I still don't. I think between my parents, I knew the minute I was diagnosed, I knew intrinsically that I was stuck with this for life. And so that, and somehow feeling sorry for myself didn't seem like it was gonna get me anywhere. Not that I didn't have depressions about other things at different parts of my life, but I've never sat. It's interesting, isn't it, that I've never sat around feeling sorry for myself about the diabetes. And in fact, now with some of that wisdom and everything, I look at some of the things that diabetes has brought me in terms of my relationship with my body as blessings. Like I talk about that's one of the blessings of diabetes. Like the fact that I did become, and here's another, I did become very aware of my body, as much as I wasn't like maybe in terms of diabetes, in terms of other things, what was going into my body diet-wise. I became, I have a baseline knowledge of nutrition. So I think one of the other things, not just the luck and the genetics, but also the fact that I have mostly been vegetarian or a fish eating, a pescatarian.
This was going to be one of my questions. Yes.
Like 17. So I do think that's helped a lot. And in fact, it used to annoy me when I used to get diabetes forecast years ago in the mail, which I did only sporadically and probably hardly ever really looked at. One of the things that annoyed me about it was that I felt like they should be shouting from the rooftops that everyone should be vegetarian. Like it seemed to make so much sense to me, but they didn't do that.
I was in that magazine once. That's all I wanted to say about that.
You were in it? Oh, now I have to go look at it.
I don't know where. I just remember having somebody send me a copy and say, look, they're talking about you in this thing. And I was like, oh, I didn't know how to feel about that exactly.
That's neat.
It was fun at the time. I don't know where the magazine is now. But so you got to something on your own that I've been wondering the whole time you were talking, because it wasn't just luck. It was, you were kind of for many years just putting in insulin, eating it on a schedule, but not eating really high carb or high sugar items. So the insulin was probably having a good go of it against the food, even though you're pretty blind to it because you're just really testing that A1C every once in a while. And so your health was able to stay there. Like, isn't that strange that if you would have been like a different eater, you'd have a different outcome right now?
I think that's true, but I will say, I can remember vividly in high school thinking, oh, good, my blood sugar's low. I can have some Haagen-Dazs now. I mean, I wouldn't do that now. In fact, it really has taken me so long. It's been such a journey, but in fact, my mantra these days is treat your lows with some juice that you can titrate, because food, even if you know what's on the package we love nutrition labels, right? It doesn't treat it the same way. And it can throw me off. So I'm like, don't forget, just have the juice. Don't look at it as an opportunity to have those blueberries or that, whatever the, filling your own food. still learning so much.
Well, it's hard. It must be hard, I should say, not to have that feeling, because I've seen that happen to Arden, where she's like, wait, I'm getting low. And she lights up. She's like, this is my shot, you know, and then she'll roll into the kitchen and just grab something that she normally wouldn't eat, I think.
She's so lucky to have you to catch it on the other end. I mean, because you're when I first started listening to this podcast and listened to the way in fact, when I first started listening, it confused me a little about, you know, whether it was you had diabetes or your daughter, because you would speak about it like it was yours, but which is kind of beautiful. I never had a parent that did, or anyone who did that.
Right. Well, it's very nice of you to say it that way, because that's not usually how I hear back from adults with type 1 about it. They're like, you talk about like you have it, you don't have it, and they're mad. And I'm like, I don't think I have diabetes, and I certainly am not trying to sound like I do.
Oh, you know, people are too critical.
Excuse me.
I went cold turkey from Facebook a couple of years ago, and I don't miss it. And I just like it's just a wash with people who take, you know, feel safe being critical of each other.
I think all those people should try recording their conversations for 5 hours every week and see if they don't once or twice speak it in a way that they don't mean. You know what I mean? Like if you end up saying like...
I try not to be too judgy.
You're very nice. Well, okay. So a lot's happened so far. Let's figure out what to do next. So you've kept up this eating style your whole life?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And
how much, except when I went to Europe at one point where I didn't want any dietary restrictions. So I ate, you know, everything and anything that was put in front of me. I don't remember desserts so much. What I remember is eating like sausages, which I am Jewish. I did not grow up in a kosher home. I'm quite kosher now, but I had a squid. I like everything. And I do remember going to bed with bottles of Perrier, like just taking them up to bed with me. I knew how to say I am diabetic in like 3 languages at the time, just so I could get through
what you needed. So your idea was just, you're going to culturally experience what exists where you are.
Yeah. I just didn't, I dropped the vegetarianism for a period of time and then picked it up again later, nice. A few years later. It took a few years to get back to it.
I'm the only one in the house that really likes fish, which means I don't get fish. Do you know what I mean? So I wish I lived with more people who enjoyed the same food I did. But
yeah, you should come to my house. I make great fish.
Thank you. I would like that.
You're ever in Jacksonville?
If I just, you find yourself in a situation where you're cooking for other people and you think, well, this isn't what I would make if I was cooking for myself, but okay, here we go.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I've been, 2 of my 3 just moved out of the house across the country, and already the load is so much lighter, and I don't have to, I've only got 3 different taste buds to cater to instead of 5. So it's kind of nice.
What's that like to have adult children move far away? That's one of my big fears.
Well, I'm very excited for them, and they've been wanting to go to LA for quite a while. The only thing that stopped them was when LA locked down. Mm-hmm. And we were finally able to talk sense into them. And then, of course, I made sure that they were both vaccinated before I would let them go. Other than that, I raised my kids to be independent, and they neither of them wanted to go to college. There's still money sitting there waiting for them if they ever decide. I have a house full of creatives, mm-hmm. and they are both musicians. And, so I finally said, okay, then since I don't understand how you think you're going to land there, by just looking up apartments online, maybe one of you should come out with me and we'll try to find you an apartment. So at least then I'll know where you're going to be.
Right.
And that's what we did. And then they rented a Penske truck and they drove across country.
Wow. See, all of that sounds amazing. But what about the part where you don't get to talk to them or see them as frequently?
Well, I'm not to say not going to say I'm not going to miss them, because I will. And I have my own agenda, because I've put my life on hold for many, many years to raise them.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to, I'm an artist that doesn't get to really do much art. And I'm really looking forward to getting back to my studio. And we are planning a trip to LA in July. So we will get to see them. And and there's technology and FaceTime. And I think they will be calling quite a bit, because it's their first time on their own. Even my 22-year-old, he was home all this time since high school graduation. And so it's really their first time navigating life,
right,
in a big city in Los Angeles. And I think they'll be calling.
I have to tell you, the whole thing sounds right. And that's what I hope too. I've done the same thing. I want my kids to be, Arden's already talking about where to go, and she's still in high school. Mm-hmm. And my son makes, a lot of comments like, well, when I move to wherever I move to, which I feel like means, I think sometimes you bring your kids up in a nice suburb because you want it to be like cozy and safe and nice. And what it ends up feeling to them is boring, and then they're like, well, let me roll out of here. And I'm excited for all that they would consider it, that they would do it, that they're not scared. All that makes me happy. I just don't want to not see them. But I'm wondering if I would get to a point like you, where I'm just like, yeah, I did my time. Like, I'm good. Like, I'll see them when I see them. That kind of seems beautiful to me.
So
I'm hoping for
my
it.
lovely mother that we've talked about a couple of times already, she really, she was a really good mother. And as I get older, I feel how much of her is in me. And she was a very kind person. The part where there was a mismatch is that she just wanted, she wanted me to be demonstratively close and loving to her. And because she didn't give me the space to come to her, she always made all the first moves. The headstrong kid that I was, I kind of backed away. Mm-hmm. And I have never done that to my own kids because of my own experience. I've always, and because also they're boys, there comes a time where, oh gosh, we can't have public displays of affection, right? So I would ask them, can I have a hug? And my boys are extremely affectionate, and I think I'm so lucky. So I think, and even in this moving out part, I think letting them call when they have the time and when they need to, for me, that's the way to go. Now, my husband's a little different. He's the one who's going to have way harder empty nest syndrome, because he's also the one who went to work every day in his not 9-to-5 job and miss a lot of day-to-day interaction with them.
Oh, so when they were older and decided not to go to college, that's probably the most time he got to spend with them.
Yeah. And all three of them have made that same decision. And we're talking about, coming from a mother who, I only got my bachelor's, but I went to college. My husband, he went on and got ordination. I mean, he's my kids are lifelong learners, though. They're very, very, they're like, one of them's actually an autodidact, I would call him. He's such an independent learner. So, I mean, I don't worry about them, but they know that it's there as an option. The thing about college, and I think it'll help you to think about this, is that it is like a halfway house to life. It's like this safe halfway house. Yeah. They can be independent there in a safer environment than if you just let them out loose in LA. But that's what my kids want to do, and I can't live my life for them. That's amazing. I hope, your listeners don't blast you for this guest, but I really, I think they're going to be fine.
No, I appreciate your message. I also think that, everyone listening who has little kids, I know you guys can't wrap your head around it. That you're just one day going to be like, all right, go ahead, leave, goodbye. But it's going to happen. So,
Uh-huh.
it's not going to not happen. And
Well, this is what we raise them for. I mean,
the
we
whole
raise
point of
them
it.
to be independent, stand on their own 2 feet, figure life out. This is how I raised them anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I've thought of my life very, very simply. I want to do a really good job with my kids. And then I want to hopefully have enough time to do something fun at the end. Like, it just seems like that to me. Like, it seems pretty basic.
I know. And I had my kids later. And I mean, I had the last 2 who are 18 now. I was 40 when I gave birth to them.
Wow.
So I've been waiting a long time to, take this maturity that I've gained and this time I'll now have and now live my life again. And I just always pray that I will live long enough to create things that I'm proud of and feel like I'm leaving, something behind, and, all the art that's in my head that I'm hoping to create, that I have enough time to get it out there.
I know how you feel. I always think that whoever leaves last will leave, I'll close the door, back up, trip, bang my head on a table and drop dead. And I'll be like, no, as I'm falling over, I'll think, no. I just thought this is my biggest,
I know.
Just need to get a little more lucky at the end. Hey, do you have any other autoimmune issues?
Yes, I have thyroid deficiency. I actually did recently get tested to see if it was Hashimoto's or not, and it is not. Mm-hmm. And I've had that since I was 15. So it was about a year after I was diagnosed. And yes, there are in my family too. Both my grandmother and my mother ended up with type 2 diabetes after I always joke that I was ahead of the trend. Like everyone's getting diabetes now. I was ahead of the curve, even in my own family. I think it all comes on my mom's side. My grandmother had rheumatoid arthritis. My mother ended up with something called myelofibrosis, which, ended up killing her, but she definitely lasted beyond what the doctors predicted.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much it for me.
And the kids don't have anything going on?
One of my kids has GERD, has reflux, mm-hmm. but I don't think I don't know if that's considered autoimmune. No, they're pretty, there's some allergies and, they're pretty good. Thank God. Yeah.
Esophagitis is often caused by stomach fluid that flows back into the food pipe. The fluid contains acid, which irritates the tissue. The problem is called, I'm not going to try to say that, but it's GERD, an autoimmune disorder called eosinophilic esophagitis also causes this condition. So GERD's not, but there is a condition that's autoimmune that can cause it, apparently.
Interesting. I'll have to look that up.
Oh,
I mean, GERD definitely runs in my family on my dad's side. My dad died of esophageal cancer and his older brother did. And that doesn't run in families, but GERD can. And that's a precursor. It can cause the esophageal cancer.
Yeah. How old was your father?
My dad was around 70, a little older.
They found that I had a little bit of that too. So when they couldn't figure out my iron thing at first, and I got, I don't know what they call it, but I got scoped from both sides.
Right.
They find
lots of fun, right?
Yeah. There's I know it's not precancers, but there's some sort of cells that they find on the wrong side of your stomach and your esophagus. So there's some stomachs, I guess, if I'm wrong about this, I apologize, but I guess something that belongs to my stomach is in my esophagus. And then they just go back every couple of years and check. And the guy's like, if we find it, we'll just clean it out. And he's like, if you pay attention to it, it should never cause you a problem. But it is one of those things that could lead to what got your father, apparently.
Right. No, you definitely have to take care of it. And scoping, as fun as that is, I guess that's the best way. And you've got a doctor who's on it. So, that's it. I mean, Itamar's gotten scoped. And my sister's got Barrett's esophagus. My uncle, my dad's younger brother has Barrett's. So I've been scoped to the best of my knowledge, I do not have the issue. But God knows I've got enough others. So
yeah, but
diabetes is like kind of taking up a lot of time here.
Barrett's is what, like, I heard in the conversation, but it was like precursor to, I don't remember. Maybe I should have paid closer attention.
Yeah. But you can look it up. So
turns out in the moment when I was going through it, my iron was so low I couldn't pay attention. So it's much better now, actually.
Yeah.
Well, this is I have to tell you that I get a lot of notes from people thanking me for having on, they say older people who have type 1. But I guess it's just sort of because of the way social media works and where the sweet spot is for the ages of people who are most commonly on social media. People over 50 get a little ignored, just because they're not as common online. But I think they are common. I just don't think you hear from them as much.
I used to be, but I'm just not anymore. Right. Because I want to live my life and not through a screen so much. But I will tell you, it was social media that first made me feel less of an island. I was feeling so alone one night many years ago, and I thought to myself, someone out there's got to be, writing about type 1 diabetes or something. And I found Six Until Me, Carrie Sparling's blog. And that was like, I read it regularly for a while because it made me feel less alone. Well, someone else is getting their tubing stuck on handles in the bathroom. Right. And it was just just the little things about having to live with this. I just loved it. Yeah. And I felt less alone.
I think her blog is closed up now. I don't think she
it is. Yeah. I know. I went back to it recently and saw that it was closed. Doing other things.
I guess you can only write about your tubing getting caught. No, I'm joking. She wrote about a lot more than that. But I guess at some point you just run your course with things. I don't know her.
But she also, it sounds like she also turned to other things. Like she's wrote poetry and wrote a book. And
that's so cool. That's really great.
I thought her blog was enormously useful. It was, I didn't immerse myself in every single person writing about diabetes. Like I don't have that kind of time anyway. So I found hers. I liked it. In terms of podcasts, I found yours and I liked it. Like I don't listen to other ones. So.
And there's no reason you should.
Yeah, exactly. Because yours is the best. We know that.
Well, not just that, but because how much are you going to listen to before you're just like, okay, there's not a lot of extra things to say. What else? It's somebody, right. In the end, you have to like the person who's saying it and the perspective they have and stuff like that.
Well, the pro tips are amazing too. That just, my primary care physician's son got diagnosed recently. They think it's type 2 right now, but I was like, listen to these. This is what you need. Make sure he listens to them. So I have to be honest. Like that was, making the pro tip series was good for me. Like it was a growth thing. Excuse me 1 second. It's the spring here and my allergies are not pleasant for me. It was a human growth thing for me because I thought, okay, the podcast is doing well and it has these ideas. And I do think that even though I've been having conversations and things come up inside of conversations, I'm seeing people have enough success with these ideas. I should put them all in one place and segment them a little better, be an adult, and so I was getting ready to do it and I could have done it. And then I just thought, no, I should add Jenny to this. Like Jenny will bring a different perspective. She'll keep me like focused. She'll be able to talk about things that I can't speak about. So it'll be medical and personal, like together, and, it's funny. Like there are people who could listen to this podcast and think that Jenny, like is
Jenny's involved in the episode she's involved in. All I mean to say is that, like, if you think of the podcast as a candy store, I own the candy store. But Jenny works behind it.
Have you ever thought of going for your CDE? Because I always have been, it would be such a great fit, one would think, although I know you love podcasting, but have you ever thought of that? So
a lot of people say it to me. Just like there's something in one of your emails that you said that a lot of people said to me, but I'm going to get to that before we end. Have I thought of it? I'm not a book learning person. I'd be terrible at it. I don't even know if I'd pass it, to be perfectly honest.
But it's so interesting that all that you've come to has completely then been seat of your pants life. It's been, that's interesting, but that's self-knowledge too.
It all comes from what I said earlier, which I have a very deep desire to be a good parent. And this is what happened to my daughter. So this is what it needed. Like, if she would have not gotten diabetes, but decided she wanted to ride a horse, I'd know a lot about horseback riding now.
Right.
It really is just what happened. I just, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So when I said to my wife, I want to have kids, I didn't mean like I'd be super interested in it for a while. So this is just what happened. And then you mentioned earlier, like, people have the internet, but I didn't have the internet. And it's so funny you brought Curry Sparling up, because back when I started a blog, I believe that it was her, another guy named Scott, and a guy named George. Those were the only 3 diabetes blogs that I was aware of at that time. And I wasn't really aware of them. I didn't become aware of them until later, when someone said to me, because I really had, like, when I was doing it, I thought, oh my God, this is genius. Why has no one else ever done this before? But the internet was very new. And then somebody said, oh, there are other people doing it. But it wasn't 1,000 people. It wasn't what it turned into eventually, which was over 4,000 blogs. It was like 3 other people. And then mine came on, some others came on. But I was so bad at search engine optimization, meaning I didn't know that it existed, that I was writing, but you couldn't Google me. So my blog grew completely word of mouth. And that ended up being why it grew slower than the other ones did. So mine was never big. Nobody ever thought anything until suddenly one day it was. And then I learned about SEO and how to, come up in a Google search, and that broadened it. But at the same time, it only lasted a couple of years. I think of them as seasons. Isn't that funny now? A couple of years. And then people stopped reading. Like, people were just like, I'm not going to read your 600-word blog post. Like, I'm not doing that, And then the podcast came from that. But everything that I learned about diabetes in there, I figured out, like, living in it, because I didn't have anybody else to ask, and I wasn't opening up that stupid book with the panther on the front of it. So I just... And by the way, it might be a great book. I have no idea. There's a Pink Panther book they used to give you when you were diagnosed. And maybe it's a terrific book, but my brain doesn't work that way. I didn't ask questions at the doctor's office. I didn't read anything. The internet didn't really exist. So I just kept intently watching what was happening and tried to figure out how to make it happen better or worse, or sooner or later, by manipulating the insulin. And then wrote about it and brought some ideas together. And
well, you've been part of my sea change. I would say you, and getting because Animus went out of business, I had to get a new pump, and I really looked at what was on the market, and I looked at the Omnipod, but I really felt like it was big. It felt big.
The first one.
Stuck to me.
Yeah.
But and I chose the Tandem. And getting the G6 Dexcom at the same time, which I had tried an earlier iteration, and I just felt like at the time it was so expensive for me to do, and I was still pricking my fingers all the time. So I decided I would just wait until they came out with one where I didn't have to prick my fingers, and boy, howdy, they did. And it's been, well, actually, I'm one of those people that it will very often quit before it's 10 days, which I wish it didn't do that. But I called Dexcom all the time, but they're a wonderful company with really good customer service, and they always replace them.
They've been on enough times and described to me that, like, look, this is a thing that goes on to a human being. Like, we make the thing, then your body chemistry comes in. So if it lasts less days or fewer days for you, my wife would be so proud of me that I didn't say less days and I caught myself. Fewer days for you than it does for Arden, who, by the way, wears her Dexcom, I would say 99.5% of the time, right out to the last minute, it stays on her.
Yeah.
And it works great. But
I know I've asked them. Too. I mean, I went one day, they actually even got me on with a nurse that's on their staff. And I said, could it be that I'm hitting scar tissue because I've been diabetic for so long and so many things have gone in my abdomen? Could it be, all these, I said, look, if you ever decide you're going to do research on the people, the chemistry of the people who it doesn't work the full 10 days for, sign me up. Right. I would love to do that. But yeah, they didn't have a good answer. And so I just live with it because it is really good technology while it's working. And it's, I always just hope that it doesn't poop out at a point where I really need it. Like, there have been some really bad times where I'm like, this is like, I'm walking for the next hour and I don't have my Dexcom.
And it just goes away.
But,
yeah.
And also I had two other pieces that have made a big difference. One is, my insurance company said I could have a coach through something called Vita Health. Mm-hmm. And that's been really wonderful. I really campaigned to make sure that coach was a CDE. And the person I have right now knows a lot about Tandem, and she's been trained specifically in Tandem. So we are working to tighten up my settings, and, because I know that it can be better. And then the last piece, and she's just been amazing. The last piece is that I finally decided to get an Apple Watch, and having my blood sugars on my wrist has been, instead of, having to pull out a pump or find my phone, has been really great.
Yeah. I'm really hopeful that the Dexcom G7 will go directly to Apple Watch. If that happens, that would be terrific.
I can't wait, because that was what was holding me back. And one day I just said, it's not even worth it. Let me just get one. And they had a really good deal. So I did it.
That's excellent. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was, in one of your emails, Susan emails me not frequently, but reasonably frequently, more than other people. You asked a question that a lot of adults with type 1 ask me. Do you remember the one? It's
about Arden.
How are you going to give this knowledge to Arden?
Yeah, how are you going to hand it off? Because you're very hands-on. And I think you've actually answered it in a couple of your interviews too.
Yeah, but I wondered if you could help me more with what the question is. Was it a physical? How are you going to put thoughts into somebody else's person, or how are you going to let go of something you're so involved in? Which part of it did you mean more?
I don't think it was. I guess it was more about somewhere in between all of that. Like, I've since heard you speak about the two of you making decisions together, or you'd say, how many carbs do you think this is? So you actually have been training her all along. But I think when I wrote that, I thought you were maybe doing all of it or most of it. And she was probably younger at that point, at least when of the interviews I had listened to at that point. Yeah. So I guess, and also knowing that I had had bad training, but I had to handle mine from a young age. I also believe, I kind of think it is important for young people. Like, I don't like when schools say, you have to do it this way. You have, and I know you don't like that either.
Right.
So I think it had to do with how were you going to transition between, you have holding most of the knowledge and most of the control, but I'm not saying control like because you're controlling.
No, I understand.
But being the parent, and her starting to do that herself. And it sounds like you're already doing that.
I'm just interested because because you have the time and the experience, and so do most people who ask the question. And so I'm interested in what it is they're concerned about, or what happened to you that makes that be your concern when you hear our dynamic.
Well, I did feel I thought, also thinking about that leaving home aspect, there will come a time in the not too distant future, because she's 16 or 17 right now?
Yeah.
Where she'll go off to college, presumably, but maybe not necessarily. My kid sure didn't. And, but when she does, you can still follow her, of course, but you could do a lot still, but, and has she ever wanted to say, Dad, I got this now? Right. I don't know.
Well, the other night she went out to dinner with my son and their cousins, and they all just went by themselves. And as she left, I was like, do you need anything? And she's like, I'm good. And I said, okay. And she went out, had a, bar food type meal that was, pretty high in fat. She did a good job with it. She came home. She's like, did you see how good my bolus was? And I was like, I did. That's great. And,
oh my goodness!
And I
proud
said,
dad,
and
right?
I was like, no, you did good. I said, that we're going to be getting hit with the fat soon. And she's like, I know, but I don't know how much the bolus for that. And I was like, okay, well, I would do this much. And then she did, and it went the way it went. But I think that in my mind, like the idea of her getting older or not being here, whichever it ends up being, it's kind of the same problem. That this is what's going to have to happen next. Like, she's going to have the experiences so she can see it happen. And then I have the tools to give her. So I don't think that I expect to just download my thoughts into her.
I can't do that.
Right. I expect that she's going to learn to have diabetes the same way everybody listening learns. And except, she can text the guy from the podcast. Like,
you've given her
pretty
a really
much the difference.
Great start and kept her so healthy for so many years. What's it going to feel like for you if, presuming that you're still sharing and you see what she's doing when she leaves? Like, if you see her one day, not doing so well, what's that going to be like for you?
I hope that what it'll be like is that I look at it and go, this is what I've been telling people. Like, I hope I have the courage of my convictions in that point. Mm-hmm. Like, that I can say, this is an experience that people need to see. And then the hope is that she'll be one of the people who doesn't want it to happen, and not one of the people who just goes, this is fine, I'll let this go.
Well, she also knows how good it feels to feel good, to feel kind of normal, because your blood sugars are in a good range.
Right.
So she's not going to like the feeling, and she'll feel it
I hope so.
At a much lower blood sugar than some of us.
Yeah.
might.
I mean, and then in the end, right? Like you mentioned with your sons, at the very end, if she doesn't do the right thing, I will sit her down and explain it to her until she agrees. That's my job, right? I'm not here to be friendly. I got to make sure everybody's okay.
I know that was the hardest part about parenting, right? That like, you're not the friend, you're the parent.
That's it.
There are times when it's rough.
I am not going to do well living the end of my life seeing my children in any kind of like massive failure, like personal. Like, I'm going to think like that will make me feel like I did something wrong. And so their lives can fall apart just as long as it happens after I'm dead. That's all. I just don't.
But hopefully it'll be small failures, and the ones that because you really do learn from the failures,
of course,
almost more than the successes.
Oh,
and
no.
It's really a truism, but it's true.
No, it's 100% true. And I'm not saying they don't have things go wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that, if Arden's held up in an apartment somewhere, and her A1C is 15, and she's like, I don't care, I'm going down hard and fast. Like, I don't want to know about that.
No, of course not. Yeah. No one wants to see that.
Right.
Have you ever heard of the book, The Blessings of a Skinned Knee?
No, but I believe in it.
It's it's really, I guess I want to say it predated the whole free range parenting thing, but it really is about like life's consequences. Parents need, need to not be helicopter parents and let life's consequences teach their children.
You can't take away the learning experiences that you're being given every day naturally, because then when something goes wrong, nobody's prepared for it at all. And that can happen. Yeah. And that can happen in ways that you can't help. I mean, somebody could have, if something went wrong with your life in the middle of the pandemic, for example, that'd be a difficult thing. Like even with some good calluses on your soul, like that still might be something harder to get through. But you got to have a little callous, you know what I mean? You got to be a little tough, and you can't be tough when your mom's picking you up she's running out of the stands and picking you up off a basketball court when you're 8 years old. Like you got to be like, just get up. I remember saying to my wife,
so interesting about having my children move across the country, because I will not be there to pick them up, short of a phone call, but I won't be there. And as they drove off in this Penske truck, an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I'm thinking, Penske will rent to an 18-year-old, and he's the better he's the driver with more experience than my 22-year-old, and he, and I thought to myself, here's where I just have to trust.
It's gonna be okay. Yeah,
I just have to trust it.
But then I am going to bang out an email. Dear Hertz, your business practices are horrible. And let me tell you why. I just watched my son drive away with one of your products, and that kid shouldn't be given a truck.
Well, it's funny. And they got all the way across the country, and he really, really was enjoying the driving experience. And then we got a call yesterday. They've reached LA, so that's great. Mm-hmm. And they're near the place they'll be renting. And he said, but we had an accident. The map had steered me through a construction site, and I needed to get out of it, and I backed up and I kind of dinged another car. I was like, they got so far.
So close. Hey, listen, I'll tell you,
we'll
young
kids. Take that one step at a time.
Let me tell the young kids listening, those map programs are ruining you. You don't even know where you're at. Okay?
I know.
Maybe look up, drive in a direction, see what happens. If it goes wrong, drive in a different direction. You'll be fine. My son never knows where he's at. He's like, I don't know. I'm following the thing.
Between being like taking a drive, like do you like going out for a drive with your family or your wife, just to go for a pretty drive? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, no, of course.
Okay, so if you're in a nice area and it's pretty, then you're going for a drive. If suddenly the area starts looking sketchy, then you're lost. Yeah. That's the difference.
When you're scared, you're lost. When you're not scared, you're going for it. Listen, one of the things I hope to do towards the end here, I know I'm saying the end, I'm about to be 50. I'm hoping to make it longer. But I'd like to get like an electric car, an EV, and I would like to drive around and go on some road trips and see some things that I want to see. And
well, you're going to have to wait for Biden to install lots of chargers, because the problem with the EV is that, and they're wonderful, and I want one too. I've decided no more gas vehicles at all in our household. But the problem is that their range is only what their range is. So, I have a friend who drives one, and she said, and the reason we decided to get it is that when we do go on long drives, we'll just rent a car.
Oh, I'm counting on the Tesla network. That's what I have my fingers crossed for. That's a pretty like countrywide network. I think you can make it almost anywhere.
Actually, I do know you can make it across the country on a Tesla, because I have we have friends who did do that. They moved from Jacksonville to LA, and they made it across in their Tesla because he had mapped it all out.
Right. See? And I just want to get in the car and see if we can get somewhere without Kelly and I strangling each other. That's my goal. I want to see.
I can't afford a Tesla, but good luck to you, Scott. That's great.
I don't know that I can either. I'm just saying, like, that's what I'm like. That's what I'm leaning on here, is the idea that maybe that's the way to do it, or that maybe that they did it, other companies will do it as well. You know what I mean? Like maybe, like, I see that one of the selling points of Tesla seems to be that they have that network. So maybe other like car manufacturers, or I don't know, companies will say, yeah, we should build a network like that as well. Like, that's my hope, is that idea will will bear out and more people will try it and create networks like that. I would like to try an electric car. It just from a technology standpoint before I die. Like it seems like the future, you know.
Oh, it's amazing technology. My friend drives a Chevy Bolt, and she's 2 years in. She's never had a repair. And I guess my mechanic was saying, well, there's no belts. There's no, like all the things we have to repair on traditional engines. Like it's just not even there.
And it's a giant slot car. It's two turning wheels on an axle and these little, these electric motors. And other than that, nothing. And some companies are starting to talk about, and I have to go, I'm sorry, I have to jump onto something else, but some companies are starting to talk about an idea of, well, I think what they call like steer by wire, meaning that at some point in the future, your steering wheel won't even have to be connected to the front axle. It'll be like a joystick. Like you turn it and then the computer will turn the wheels commensurate to how you're turning the wheel.
So interesting. I have a friend who we went to the movies. This was pre-pandemic with, I don't know, one or two of my kids. And we walked out of the movie theater and he said, and watch this. He was already enjoying like showing us his new Tesla. And he said, watch this. And he had the Tesla come pick us up, no driver. And that was terrifying. I mean, I just feel like if I'm standing on a street and I see a car go by with no driver, that's like...
That's the future. I just want to see the future ones. I had a computer when I was 13, which was a long time ago. It was one of the first computers you could buy in your home. And I want to drive an electric car before I go. And by the way, before I get so old that it feels so fast and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm old. Like I just, I want to get in one time and try it before that. So,
you'll be able to. Yeah, I mean, they're gonna come way down in price, and absolutely.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
All right, this was delightful. I'm sorry I have to rush away, but I really appreciate you doing this.
It was really delightful on this end too.
I'm glad.
All right,
I'm so glad.
Well, fun sometime.
Yeah.
Take care.
Have a great day. You must be thinking right now, is Scott ever going to run out of amazing guests to have on the Juicebox podcast? No, I'm not. I'm not going to. This was another one. Susan, cha-ching, paying us back with good talking. I want to thank the Contour Next One blood glucose meter for being a sponsor on today's episode. Go to contournext.com/juicebox. Get yourself a good meter, not just any meter. And I'd also like to thank Omnipod, makers of the Omnipod Dash and the Omnipod Promise. Go to omnipod.com/juicebox. Find out if you're eligible for a free 30-day supply of the Omnipod Dash tubeless insulin pump. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.